The morning mist floated low as old paths curled gently through woods where silence and memory slept beneath mossy roots. Men walked slowly where the trail turned soft, their boots pressing into earth worn smooth by generations of quiet footsteps. Women gathered herbs near the edge of the woods, pausing to watch paths vanish into trees like whispered invitations. Children followed butterflies between trees, wondering how the paths knew which way to bend around ferns and sleepy stones. The paths held stories without words, winding softly where wind barely touched branches, above drifting slow through ancient leafy air. Old men spoke of the paths as living things shaped by footsteps and forgotten songs sung into the bark of trees. Women believed the woods remembered who walked through, and the paths bent gently toward kindness and patience left long ago. Children chased dandelion seeds along the paths, their laughter soft like wind brushing petals beside old stumps and hidden streams. The paths never hurried, they curved with grace between tree roots and fallen logs, resting quiet in morning's golden breath. Men paused to drink from their flasks, their eyes drifting down the trail like thoughts wrapped in sleepy green shadows. Women touched the bark of trees and closed their eyes, letting memories rise like birds from branches deep in time. Children drew shapes in the dirt, tracing lines that echoed the path's quiet rhythm between ferns and gentle moss. The woods whispered softly to the path, and the path answered with each curve like a slow, thoughtful exhale. Men followed the turns without question, knowing old paths always led somewhere, even if the destination had long been forgotten. Women hummed lullabies while walking, slowly watching light spill through trees onto trails that shimmered like threads of dream. Children skipped ahead, then circled back their feet, finding rhythm in roots and stones, like dancers learning a silent song. The birds sang low above the path, their sleepy tunes drifting down where grass leaned inward as if to listen. Men noticed the way trees leaned above the path, like protectors keeping sunlight dappled and breeze soft and slow. Women picked berries beside the trail, pausing to smile at rabbits who twitched their ears but didn't run away. Children whispered secrets to hollow logs, believing the forest kept promises tucked deep inside ancient bark and sleepy soil. The path narrowed where memories thickened, winding past moss-covered stones that remembered feet from seasons no longer spoken aloud. Men left tokens, sometimes a feather, a coin, a stone offering, thanks for the path's gentle welcome and quiet understanding. Women knelt beside wildflowers, letting their skirts gather forest dust like a blessing gathered from leaves and fallen dreams. Children built tiny houses from twigs beside the path, leaving them for fairies or sleep-loving travelers to discover at dusk. The path curled beside a brook whose sleepy song echoed gently through the trees like an old friend's voice. Men stopped to listen, not with ears, but hearts, hearing stories in water that had touched every curve of stone. Women dipped fingers into the stream and closed their eyes, feeling time flow past like memory wrapped in silver threads. Children tossed pebbles that rippled softly across the surface, then sat still as frogs blinked and wind turned quiet again. The path rose gently with the land winding past trees whose arms stretched wide like sleepy guardians of old dreams. Men rested on tree roots wide as benches, their hands resting on knees, their breath slowing with the woods. Women closed their eyes beside tall trunks, their thoughts trailing behind the wind that carried songs and forest hush. Children found squirrels, who watched from above, their tails flicking once, before disappearing into sleepy branches overhead. The woods did not mind footsteps, the path remembered them all, and wore them gently like laces through soft green. Men followed bends without maps, trusting curves to lead where peace settled thick like leaves after the rain. Women told stories passed from grandmothers about paths that moved slightly over years, but always returned to where dreams waited. Children followed sunbeams between trees, calling them forest lanterns that flickered gold upon the winding, sleepy path. The trees leaned close, where the path darkened branches, braiding shadows into places where silence rested more deeply. Men lit small pipes and let the smoke curl upward, joining mist that drifted between trunks like thoughtful ghosts. Women carried shawls over their shoulders, their steps slow and steady as the path led them deeper into knowing. Children balanced on logs beside the trail, arms out wide like birds gliding through moss and quiet daylight. The path crossed a fallen tree, now bridge, an altar to the woods where deer once stood without fear. Men brushed moss from the old trunk and left it behind with a nod and silent word of thanks. Women ran fingers across its grain, feeling the age beneath soft green and the hush of long-past storms. Children crawled across, laughing low, their bodies wrapped in sunlight and the thrill of tiny discovery beneath leafy shade. The path grew thin, then wide again, like breath exhaled softly by the forest's sleeping chest. Men said nothing as they walked, letting wind carry old songs between tree limbs and worn stones. Women whispered names of flowers blooming beside the trail, their voices blending into forest air like fog into grass. Children bent low to watch ants follow their own trails like miniature paths dancing through needles and bark. The trees made room for the path, and the path kept winding past mushrooms, leaves, and sleepy shadows. Men sometimes turned around just to walk it again, feeling it shift beneath their feet like memory made solid. Women stayed longer than planned, their minds soothed by the way silence lived between every root and distant bird call. Children asked if the woods were magic, and no one ever truly said no. The path rose once more through fern and pine and old stones painted with moss and sun. Men felt something old inside them settle as the forest curved around their breath. Women felt peace settle on their shoulders like a blanket folded from stillness and green. Children picked up pine cones and imagined them as treasures gifted by trees for dreamers passing through. The path never stopped, just faded gently into the forest's deeper hush. Men looked back once before stepping forward again into woods that always welcomed without asking anything in return. Women touched the bark of one tall tree before vanishing with the path behind leaves and time. Children waved goodbye to something unseen, then chased a squirrel into dappled morning silence. The forest held its breath as old trails curled beneath leaves like secrets folded softly under layers of moss and thyme. Men stepped gently through hush where the ground rose slightly, as if a memory had lifted beneath their tired boots. Women paused beneath branches, letting light spill through leaves that glowed golden above paths hidden beneath seasons of silence. Children crouched low to peek beneath rustling layers and gasped as old stones peeked through like faces too shy to speak. The trails had vanished but not forgotten, their shape cradled under ferns and drifting petals and soft, brown, sleepy leaves. Old men said the trails were shy, sleeping roads that only stirred when someone walked slowly enough to listen. Women believed the leaves were guardians laid gently by trees to keep the paths from being lost to rushing. Children thought the trails were hiding for fun, peeking out only when you whispered kindly to the ground. The leaves danced slowly when wind passed, as if the forest exhaled memories too soft for anyone but roots to understand. Men brushed leaves aside, sometimes their fingers, brushing cool stone or faint grooves like footsteps pressed in earth long ago. Women knelt quietly, pressing palms to dirt, hoping to feel the heartbeat of travelers long past beneath bark and branch. Children made pretend maps in the soil, tracing loops and turns in the dust, just like ancient forest paths once curved. No birds sang loudly here, only tiny chirps and distant rustling, where trees told one another about paths hidden below. Men spoke in low voices around fires, saying the forest never forgot the shape of the path, even if we did. Women listened to the wind and felt it tugged softly toward corners of the forest where trails still slept unseen. Children followed butterflies deeper into trees, letting wings lead them gently toward places where the path whispered under fallen color. The trails wound slow and careful beneath roots like ribbons gently held in the forest's quiet curled fingers. Men walked the edge of clearings where grass changed texture, hinting at something older pressed below like breath beneath blankets. Women picked berries beside those changes in ground where the wind paused and the shadows leaned gently toward memory. Children picked up leaves and let them fall again, hoping they would reveal the trail like magic flipping a page. The forest moved at a patient pace, letting leaves fall slowly enough to keep the trail soft and always waiting. Men swore they felt warmth where the trail once was, like it had been dreaming under the hush of years. Women said the paths chose to hide, resting peacefully until the right steps called them awake beneath a golden hush. Children believed the trails were sleeping snakes, not dangerous, but wise, coiled carefully under quiet layers of forest time. The deeper the woods, the softer the trail, as if even time walked slowly there, laying down gentle, leafy silence. Men leaned on staffs beside stones, shaped just too perfectly to be random, their eyes tracing patterns in earth and moss. Women lit lanterns near the ground, their sleepy glow revealing bits of path where light folded gently like old lace. Children left pine cones as markers, hoping the forest would understand their wish to find what lay beneath the leafy skin. The trees swayed slowly above like ancient watchers, nodding as each footstep came closer to forgotten curves of trail. Men sometimes slept beside the trail and awoke feeling they had moved without moving, lead gently through dreams by ancient ground. Women whispered songs to the trees, their notes carried downward like petals, sinking toward the place where paths once glowed. Children skipped through soft mulch, imagining they were being followed by footprints older than anything they'd ever read in books. The leaves held no anger, only silence, their soft layering, a lullaby meant to keep stories wrapped safe for centuries. Men told of spirits that guided feet along the hidden trails, turning strangers into caretakers with every careful step. Women traced paths in embroidery, copying the shapes they saw in leaves scattered across floorboards and fieldstones. Children sang to themselves as they walked, never loud, just enough to keep company with the hush below. The trail wound between trees that grew close, their trunks leaning like grandparents, hiding something wonderful behind folded arms. Men marked spots where the wind changed, knowing some breezes only came from places the forest still remembered well. Women knelt near mushrooms, blooming along a curve in the leaves, and smiled softly, knowing the trail had once passed there. Children drew stick figures in soft dirt where footsteps once echoed, hoping the forest would welcome them into the old flow. Nothing hurried in these woods, where even birds seemed to perch slower and watch longer, as if guarding invisible lines. Men said each step uncovered a thread, and soon the forest would sew you into the story of the trail. Women left behind bread and fruit in the hollow of trees to thank the trail, even if unseen. Children waved at shadows between trunks, pretending they were forest friends who knew where every hidden trail still wandered. The leaves sighed softly when stepped on, and sometimes lifted just enough to hint at what slept beneath. Men sometimes caught glimmers in moonlight where no path should be, but where memory still walked in silver lines. Women told bedtime stories about trails that only appeared when your heart was quiet and your feet respectful. Children lay on the leaves and closed their eyes, hoping dreams would show them every twist of the sleeping paths. The forest never forgot a trail, it only let time cover it gently with whispers made of bark and breath. Men brushed dew from mossy logs, finding pieces of trail written in fungi shaped like arrows for patient eyes. Women walked in pairs, speaking rarely, letting the forest speak instead, and hearing answers in shifting wind and soft shadows. Children laughed when they found old footprints pressed deep and wide in the mud, like the path had sighed once before hiding. The trees never moved fast, but they remembered, and the trails beneath them remembered even more. Men left walking sticks at trail's end, letting the forest keep them like bookmarks inside a living, breathing story. Women planted flowers near places where paths crossed, hoping beauty would mark the way again for future feet. Children danced in patches of sunlight, calling softly to trails they could not see, but felt in bones and breath. Sometimes a squirrel darted through a line of leaves where the path had been and vanished again, like memory into fog. Men stood still when the path turned unsure and listened for creaks in branches that sounded almost like a yes. Women felt warmth in old places, even on cold days, knowing the trail pulsed just beneath the hush. Children placed leaves in shapes of arrows, copying the language of the forest, where direction meant trust, not speed. The paths curved for reason, never straight, always listening to the way roots grew and sunlight fell. Men respected the curves, they never questioned where the trail went, only how long it would ask for silence. Women knelt beside curves where mushrooms grew, knowing life still followed even in places forgotten by maps. Children called them sleepy spirals and raced gently around them until the breeze itself seemed to carry laughter forward. The forest let paths sleep, not to lose them, but to let them rest like songs between verses. Men understood this stillness was part of the journey, that not every trail must be walked to be known. Women knew that sometimes paths returned only in dreams, and that was enough. Children believed the trail chose who to trust and left signs for those who stepped kindly. The wind carried a leaf upward, then dropped it slowly across a space that once held footsteps and still might. Men did not disturb it, they stepped around and let the leaf stay as guardian of what lay beneath. Women hummed an old tune, and the trees answered with a rhythm only those walking quietly could ever hear. Children bent low to smell the leaves, hoping the scent would carry a memory of where the path once curved. The ground felt soft and steady beneath feet, as if the trail still waited with sleepy patience just below. Men promised to return, and the forest whispered back, though it used only the rustle of branches and breath. Women brushed leaves from their cloaks and felt they had touched something sacred and deeply unseen. Children turned one last time and waved to the trees, hoping the hidden path knew it had been loved again. The forest was still as silent paths stretched gently through moss and roots, where soft footsteps faded into ancient leafy hush. Men carried lanterns that flickered low as trees leaned closer, and the paths curved quietly beyond the edge of memory. Women walked with hands outstretched, brushing ferns that bent slightly toward them, as if guiding or perhaps gently warning. Children skipped ahead, then paused, uncertain, their laughter swallowed quickly by the hush that followed every silent footfall. No signs marked these paths, only fallen petals and twisted branches that whispered to those who listened long enough. Men glanced backward, often trying to remember how many turns ago their boots last touched something familiar or certain. Women whispered to each other, saying nothing loud, knowing silence was part of the path's slow and winding voice. Children crouched beside mushrooms, pointing to shapes in bark that looked like arrows carved softly by unseen hands. The silent paths were never straight, they curved with purpose, like thoughts traveling slowly through sleepy evening minds. Men adjusted packs with care, their eyes scanning shadows where light fell strangely through twisted limbs and hanging moss. Women left small stones in corners, hoping they'd define them again on the way back if the forest allowed. Children broke twigs for fun, then grew quiet as the air seemed to notice and gently hush them again. The paths changed slowly beneath their feet, each step becoming unfamiliar, as if the forest breathed in and rearranged itself. Men wondered aloud if they'd been this way before, but trees gave no answer, only sleepy rustle from above. Women turned maps, slowly their fingers following drawn lines that no longer matched the forest's gentle twists and turns. Children clung to skirts and sleeves, their brave hearts slowly softening beneath the weight of endless green and shifting trail. The trees seemed kind but firm, as if saying, "Yes, you may walk here, but only if you requiet." Men nodded silently, as though they had heard that message long before, but forgotten to remember it clearly. Women moved slowly now, placing each foot with care, as though the trail beneath might vanish if stepped on wrong. Children counted their steps aloud at first, then whispered numbers more softly when even their own voices felt too loud. The deeper they went, the more the forest folded around them like pages closing softly after each line had passed. Men smelled pine and earth, and something faint, like memory hanging in the air, just out of reach. Women noticed that birds no longer sang, only distant calls floated sometimes like echoes of songs once heard here. Children looked upward, often searching the gaps between trees for sky that now seemed too far away to find. The silent paths did not mislead, they simply waited for travelers to listen carefully and remember why they had come. Men knelt beside trickling streams, tracing the water's path, as if it might carry directions on its sleepy silver surface. Women whispered names from old stories, hoping the forest remembered them kindly and might show mercy in its quiet ways. With patterns shaped like hands, as if the trees were pointing gently toward somewhere almost remembered. Sometimes the wind shifted the leaves, and the path would shimmer faintly, then vanish again beneath a sleepy cover. Men marked trees with soft chalk, but rain came soon and washed the signs away like forgotten thoughts. Women tied ribbons to branches, hoping bright color might call them back, but even ribbon faded in the forest's breath. Children scattered breadcrumbs once, but forest creatures followed, and soon even those were gone, swallowed by paws and fluttering wings. Still, they walked, their bodies tired, but softened by the rhythm of steps among ferns and trunks that watched silently. Men began to feel they were not lost, only wandering inside something older than direction or time. Women stopped searching for roads back and instead listened to each step for the story it might still carry. Children laughed again now and then, softer than before, but true, as they accepted the quiet as part of the journey. The forest never tried to frighten, only to invite stillness, where questions asked too loudly would never be answered. Men sat on stumps to rest and saw faces in bark that seemed familiar, though they'd never been here before. Women sipped water and shared dried fruit, passing it hand to hand with the reverence of an ancient prayer. Children pointed at squirrels, watching from branches, tails curled like question marks under sleepy beams of green light. They found strange shapes in stones, trails of ants winding beside the path like tiny mirrored journeys. Men placed their hands on cool trunks, feeling the steady heartbeat of wood beneath layers of time. Women braided leaves into their hair, as though the forest might welcome them more kindly if worn with grace. Children balanced on roots, whispering stories into hollows, hoping the silence would tell them one in return. The further they walked, the more they belonged to the hush, and the trail curved more gently beneath their feet. Men stopped wondering where they were and started wondering who had walked here long before and what they had whispered. Women felt footsteps of others beneath their own, as though past and present had twined softly like vines. Children spun in circles, then fell laughing into moss that cradled them like the arms of sleepy green giants. Evening light came slowly, but brought no fear, only deeper shadows and quieter thoughts drifting through the forest's breath. Men lit lanterns, but kept the glow low, letting darkness walk beside them like a companion instead of a threat. Women sang softly beneath their breath tunes, without words that carried gently into branches and leaves. Children followed fireflies, their small feet tapping the ground in rhythms only the night could understand. Sometimes they circled the same clearing twice, the trees tall and patient, as if waiting for them to notice the repeat. Men smiled quietly at this learning that not every step must be forward for it to have meaning. Women nodded and sat for a while, letting the trail unfold again inside their hearts before moving on. Children traced paths with sticks in the dust, trying to match what they saw in their dreams the night before. The silence grew deeper, but also warmer, like a blanket wrapped in wind and bark and moonlight. Men stopped speaking, not from fear, but because silence felt fuller than any words might manage here. Women touched one another's hands gently, as if reassurance could be passed like light between fingers. Children leaned against trees and closed their eyes, sensing the forest esp's pulse, slow and steady as a bedtime lullaby. They did not feel lost now, only held like pages in a story the forest had not finished yet. Men remembered things they had known, they forgotten trails from childhood, or words from grandparents spoken beneath summer leaves. Women recalled lullabies and old recipes, the kind only remembered in the hush between one breath and another. Children dreamed as they walked, dreaming of paths made from stars or fur or woven flower petals leading everywhere at once. They rested where moss grew deep and the forest gathered round them, not to confuse, but to comfort. Men lay on their backs and watched shadows move like soft dancers across the open spaces between branches. Women closed their eyes and listened for their own breath among the whispers of the woods. Children curled into blankets of leaves and drifted to sleep before the trail's next turn revealed itself. No map marked these paths, yet every footfall was welcomed like a verse added to an old forgotten poem. Men would rise in morning and walk again, their questions fewer now and their steps more sure. Women would smile and feel the path beneath like a pulse, familiar and waiting for their return. Children would follow butterflies again, giggling as the trail changed ahead just slightly, as if laughing too. They were not lost, they had only walked deeper into something too gentle to be named aloud. The silent paths continued winding ahead beneath trees, who remembered everything and whispered only to those who walked slowly.